In a single room, over the course of just 3 months, the fate of an entire continent was decided. The year was 1884. The place, Berlin, Germany. Around a table sat men in tailored suits, smoking cigars, sipping wine, and drawing lines across maps with rulers and pencils.
None of them had ever set foot in the heart of Africa. None of them spoke the languages of the people whose lands they were dividing. And yet, with a stroke of a pen, they carved up kingdoms that had stood for centuries. They split families, erased borders, and declared ownership over lands they had never seen. By the time the conference ended, almost the entire African continent had been handed over to European powers. No African leader was invited, no African voice was heard. This is the story of the Scramble for Africa, a race so ruthless, so rapid, and so devastating that it changed the course of history forever. Within just 3 decades, over 90% of Africa fell under European control. But how did it happen? Why did it happen? And what were the Africans doing while their land was being stolen from under them? Stay with us, because this is not just a story of conquest. It's a story of resistance, survival, and a legacy that still shapes Africa today. Welcome to Africa Hidden History. I'm your host, and today we are diving deep into one of the most transformative and tragic periods in African history, the Scramble for Africa.
Between 1881 and 1914, European powers, Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, Portugal, and Spain raced to claim African territories. They called it exploration and civilization. But in reality, it was colonization, exploitation, domination. In this documentary, we will walk through the entire timeline of the Scramble. We'll explore the economic greed, the political rivalries, and the technological advantages that made this conquest possible. We'll introduce you to the African kingdoms and leaders who resisted, some successfully, others tragically, and we'll uncover the hidden truths, the secret deals, the manufactured borders, and the long-lasting scars left on the African continent. This story begins in the late 1800s, but its roots stretch back centuries. To understand the Scramble, we must first understand what Africa looked like before the Europeans arrived in full force. We must understand the wealth, the power, and the complexity of African societies that many history books choose to ignore. So let's go back to a time when Africa was not a dark continent, but a land of thriving civilizations, ancient trade routes, and independent kingdoms. Let's begin. Before European powers descended upon Africa with their guns and treaties, the continent was home to hundreds of distinct ethnic groups, languages, and political systems. From the Sahara to the Cape, Africa was far from the uncivilized wilderness that European propaganda later portrayed. In West Africa, the Ashanti Empire controlled rich gold mines and commanded a powerful military. The Sokoto Caliphate stretched across what is now northern Nigeria, governing millions under Islamic law. In East Africa, the Sultanate of Zanzibar dominated the Indian Ocean trade, dealing in ivory, spices, and textiles. In Southern Africa, the Zulu kingdom had transformed into a formidable military state under the leadership of King Shaka. They were not primitive tribes waiting to be discovered. These were organized states with courts, armies, economies, and diplomatic relations with one another. They traded with the Middle East, India, and even China long before Europeans claimed to have opened Africa to the world. But by the mid-1800s, Europe was changing. And with that change came a hunger, an insatiable hunger for resources, markets, and power. The Industrial Revolution, which began in Britain in the late 1700s, transformed Europe. Factories needed raw materials, cotton, rubber, palm oil, metals, and minerals. European industries needed new markets to sell their manufactured goods, and European nations needed prestige, territories that would prove their dominance on the world stage. At the same time, new technologies gave Europeans unprecedented advantages. Steamships could navigate Africa's rivers. The telegraph allowed instant communication across continents. Railways could transport troops and goods deep into the interior. And perhaps most importantly, the Maxim machine gun, the first fully automatic weapon, gave European soldiers the ability to mow down African warriors armed with spears and outdated muskets. One British officer infamously summarized the imbalance. Whatever happens, we have got the Maxim gun and they have not. But technology alone doesn't explain the scramble. There was also a shift in European attitudes. By the 1880s, a dangerous idea had taken hold in Europe: the belief in racial superiority. Pseudoscientific theories claimed that Europeans were biologically and culturally superior to Africans. This ideology was used to justify conquest, enslavement, and exploitation. It was called the white man's burden, the notion that Europeans had a moral duty to civilize Africa. Christian missionaries arrived in Africa, genuinely believing they were saving souls. But behind them came soldiers, merchants, and administrators who saw Africa as a treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. Even before the official scramble began, European powers had established coastal footholds. The Portuguese controlled Angola and Mozambique. The British held the Cape Colony in South Africa and trading posts in West Africa. The French had expanded their influence in Algeria and Senegal. But these were still small, scattered territories. Everything was about to change. The man who lit the fuse of the scramble was not a soldier or a statesman. He was a king with a private ambition, King Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold was obsessed with acquiring a colony. Belgium was a small country, and Leopold envied the vast empires of Britain and France. So he turned his eyes to Central Africa, specifically the Congo Basin, a massive region rich in ivory, rubber, and timber. But Leopold was cunning. He didn't invade the Congo as a national conquest. Instead, he hired the explorer Henry Morton Stanley to travel through the Congo, signing treaties with local chiefs. These treaties, written in languages the chiefs couldn't read, supposedly granted Leopold personal control over their lands. In 1885, the Congo Free State was born, not as a Belgian colony, but as Leopold's private property. He ruled it like a corporate plantation, extracting wealth through forced labor, mutilation, and mass murder. Millions of Congolese people died under his brutal regime, but Leopold's actions did something else. They set off alarm bells across Europe. If Belgium, a tiny nation, could claim the heart of Africa, what was stopping Britain, France, and Germany from doing the same? The race was on. Let's meet the players in this imperial game. Britain was the dominant global power, controlling the seas and vast territories in Asia and the Americas. In Africa, Britain wanted to secure a continuous chain of territories from Cairo in the north to Cape Town in the south, a vision championed by the imperialist Cecil Rhodes. France sought to build a horizontal empire across Africa, stretching from Senegal in the west to Djibouti in the east. French leaders saw African colonies as essential to maintaining France's status as a great power. Germany, newly unified under Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, arrived late to the imperial stage. But Bismarck saw colonies as useful bargaining chips in European diplomacy. Germany claimed Togoland, Cameroon, Namibia, and Tanganyika. Portugal, once the dominant European power in Africa, clung desperately to Angola and Mozambique, hoping to connect them with a transcontinental corridor. Italy, also newly unified, sought colonies to rival the other European powers. Italy invaded Ethiopia and Somalia, With disastrous results, Belgium under King Leopold II controlled the Congo through ruthless exploitation. Spain held small territories in Western Sahara and Equatorial Guinea.